Everyday actions feel harmless until someone decides rules do not apply to them. These 6 stories show how impatience, arrogance, and misplaced confidence turned routine moments into fatal mistakes. Not through bad luck, but through choices so unnecessary, they ended lives within seconds. It was March 18, 2017, in Irvine, California. The morning was quiet across a mid-range apartment complex near a business park. Most residents were preparing for work. Water pipes hummed as showers ran in several units. Inside one second-floor apartment, a bathroom light was on, and steam gathered along the ceiling. Donald Peterson was 34 years old and worked as an operations analyst for a logistics company. His job involved tracking schedules, fixing delays, and responding to emails tied to shipping deadlines. Co-workers described him as organized and focused on efficiency. He followed strict routines meant to save time, especially during weekday mornings before work. His apartment was set up for that routine. A small standing desk was positioned near the bathroom doorway. A phone with a waterproof case hung on a hook just inside the shower. He often ate breakfast wherever he happened to be standing. Neighbors had previously noticed that his bathroom door was sometimes left open while the shower was running, with movement back and forth between rooms. That morning, Donald had an early internal meeting scheduled. The shower was turned on shortly after 7 a.m. Steam filled the bathroom, and moisture spread across the tile floor. A bowl of cereal was placed on the bathroom counter near the sink. When it was set down, milk splashed over the edge and spilled onto the tile below. He moved between the shower and the counter while checking emails on his phone. Water dripped from his body onto the floor each time he stepped out of the tub. The spilled milk mixed with the water, spreading into a thin layer across the smooth tile. The shower continued to run. A resident in the adjacent unit later reported hearing steady water noise and footsteps through the shared wall. The sounds were normal for the time of day and did not raise concern. While reaching toward the counter to pick up his phone, he shifted his weight backward. His foot lost traction on the wet tile. The slip happened quickly. He fell sideways toward the wall of the shower. His head struck the metal shower control valve mounted several inches above the tub edge. The impact caused him to collapse partially into the tub. The bowl fell from the counter and broke on the floor. Water continued to flow for an extended period. It pooled on the bathroom floor and leaked through the ceiling into the unit below. A downstairs neighbor noticed water dripping from a light fixture and went upstairs to report the issue. The bathroom door was unlocked. The neighbor found Donald unresponsive inside the tub area. The water was turned off, and apartment management was notified. The death was later attributed to a severe head injury caused by the fall. The slick floor conditions and the height and placement of the shower valve were noted as contributing factors. There was no indication of equipment failure. The bathroom fixtures were installed correctly and showed no defects. The incident was recorded by apartment management as an accidental death within the unit. Repairs were made to the affected apartments, and the building returned to normal operation. The case did not receive public attention beyond internal documentation. It was November 19, 2016, in Omaha, Nebraska. The afternoon was gray and quiet as office buildings moved through the final hours of the workday. Inside a mid-sized insurance office, the atmosphere was steady and controlled. Printers ran, keyboards clicked, and employees worked through routine tasks. Nothing about the setting suggested urgency. Elaine Porter was 44 years old and worked as an administrative assistant. Her responsibilities included managing schedules, organizing files, and handling client correspondence. Co-workers described her as efficient and discreet. She rarely asked for help and preferred to finish tasks on her own, often pushing through breaks rather than leaving work unfinished. Elaine usually ate lunch at her desk instead of using the break room. She used part of her lunch hour to complete tasks, then rushed through the remaining minutes to eat. Over time, eating quickly became routine. Meals were treated as something to get through rather than slow down for, especially on days when her work felt nearly finished. The mechanics of swallowing usually operate without thought, but eating rapidly increases the risk of choking, especially when food is not fully chewed. Elaine was aware of this in a general sense, but had never experienced a problem. The habit had worked for her before. That afternoon, Elaine heated a container of chicken and rice and returned to her desk. She was behind on paperwork and wanted to leave on time. She ate while reviewing documents, taking fast bites without pausing. Her attention stayed on the screen in front of her. Partway through the meal, she began coughing. The sound was brief at first, then stopped. She lifted one hand slightly without looking up and continued standing near her desk. Several co-workers glanced in her direction and then looked away, assuming the interruption was minor. The piece of food lodged fully in her airway. Air could no longer pass. Elaine stood abruptly, her chair scraping backward. She attempted to cough again, but no sound came out. Her mouth opened, but there was no airflow. Instead of moving into the open or signaling clearly, she remained near her desk. She lifted a hand again, repeating the same motion. The gesture was small and non-specific. Oxygen deprivation progressed rapidly. Elaine staggered into the aisle. Her hands went to her throat. Her movements slowed as her strength faded. Within moments, she collapsed onto the floor. Activity spread through the office as employees stood from their desks. Several approached but hesitated, uncertain of what was happening. By the time abdominal thrusts were attempted, Elaine was unresponsive. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes and found Elaine without a pulse. The airway obstruction was removed and resuscitation efforts began. Despite intervention, the prolonged lack of oxygen had already caused severe injury. Elaine was pronounced dead later that afternoon. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation due to food airway obstruction. The lack of oxygen led to irreversible brain damage, followed by cardiac arrest. Toxicology showed no alcohol or drugs, and no underlying medical conditions contributed to the event. The death was ruled accidental. In the weeks that followed, the office implemented mandatory choking response training for all staff. Visual guides were placed in common areas to illustrate signs of airway obstruction. Employees later reflected on how easily the situation had been misread. Elaine had been surrounded by people when she choked. What delayed help was not distance or isolation, but her decision to minimize the disruption and continue behaving as if nothing was wrong. The lunch container remained on her desk, half finished, long after the workday ended. It was March 4th, 2013, in Albany, New York. The afternoon was cold but clear. Snow from earlier storms had melted unevenly, leaving damp patches along sidewalks. Cars lined the residential street, and people moved through the neighborhood without urgency. Nothing about the walk home stood out as unusual. Karen Whitlow was 52 years old and worked part-time as a library aide at a nearby public branch. Her job involved shelving books, assisting visitors, and maintaining quiet order in reading areas. Co-workers described her as steady and dependable. She preferred doing things the same way each day and rarely changed routines once they were set, believing consistency mattered more than small adjustments. Karen walked the same route home every weekday. The path took her past older sidewalks shaded by large trees. Over time, the routes had shifted several concrete slabs. One section had a raised edge she had noticed years earlier. She had stepped over it many times without incident. There was a safer option. Across the street, the sidewalk had been repaved within the last year and was smooth and level. It was visible from where she walked. Taking it required crossing once and adding a short detour. Karen rarely used it. She disliked waiting for traffic and preferred staying on the same side of the road, even when conditions were not ideal. She had mentioned the raised slab to a neighbor once, but did not follow up. It remained unfixed. Over time, the spot became part of her routine. She adjusted her steps without thinking and treated the uneven pavement as something she could manage. That afternoon, Karen left work at her usual time. She carried a light tote and wore low walking shoes. The pavement was damp in places from melting snow. As she approached the familiar tree-lined section, her pace remained steady. She did not cross the street. Her right foot landed just short of the raised slab. As her left foot swung forward, the toe caught the lifted edge. The sudden stop disrupted her balance. Her body pitched forward as her foot remained trapped. She tried to recover, but the movement happened too quickly. Her hands lifted, but there was nothing to grab. She fell forward and to the side. Her head struck the concrete curb bordering the sidewalk. The impact was hard. A nearby pedestrian later described hearing a sharp sound that drew immediate attention. Karen collapsed onto the pavement and did not move. Nearby pedestrians slowed and gathered at a distance as Karen lay motionless on the pavement. No one touched her. A dark stain spread beneath the back of her head where it had struck the curb. She showed no signs of response. The death was later attributed to a traumatic head injury caused by the fall. The raised sidewalk slab was identified as the initiating hazard. There were no medical conditions that contributed to the loss of balance. In the days that followed, the raised edge was ground down and marked. The sidewalk returned to a level surface. Foot traffic continued along the same route. Neighbors later remarked that Karen had always walked that side of the street, even when others crossed to avoid uneven pavement. The alternative had been there the entire time, adding only seconds to the walk. The route remained familiar, the danger did not. It was September 14, 2023, in Las Vegas, Nevada. The afternoon heat lingered between nearby apartment buildings, and most units were quiet as residents worked or rested indoors. In one mid-rise complex built in the late 1990s, an apartment bathroom filled with steam as water ran behind a closed shower curtain. Nothing about the day suggested danger. Monica Alvarez was 32 years old and worked from home. Her primary job was in corporate sales, where she handled client calls and tracked daily targets. In addition to that role, she took on a side job as a virtual assistant, managing email and schedules for small businesses during off hours. The combined workload often pushed her days late into the night. Her schedule shifted constantly to meet overlapping deadlines. She lived alone and structured her time tightly. Short routines helped her stay on track. Showers were quick, meals were simple, breaks were treated as tools to reset rather than rest. She used multiple devices throughout the day, including a laptop, headset, phone, and chargers that stayed plugged in so notifications would not be missed. The apartment bathroom was small, with the sink and outlet positioned close together. The bathroom outlet was an older unit without a functioning safety shutoff. The outlet cover had been loose for months. It had sparked once when a charger was unplugged, but the issue was never reported. An extension cord was sometimes used to keep devices within reach during work hours. That afternoon, Monica overslept. Her scheduled login time was 4 p.m. She woke at 3:50 p.m. Instead of logging in immediately, she decided to take a quick shower, treating the delay as manageable. She brought her phone into the bathroom and plugged the charger into the wall outlet near the sink. The shower ran hot. Steam built quickly in the narrow space. Moisture collected on the mirror, counter, and outlet plate. Water dripped onto the tile floor and spread toward the base of the vanity. As she finished, her phone vibrated on the counter and shifted closer to the sink. She reached toward the charger to adjust the plug. The cord brushed against pooled water near the outlet. Electricity arced through the exposed wiring. The current traveled through the wet cord and into her hand. Her muscles locked instantly. She could not release her grip. The shock passed through her arm and chest, disrupting her heart rhythm. Her body collapsed against the counter and then the floor. The shower continued to run. In the adjacent unit, a neighbor later reported hearing a heavy impact against the shared wall, followed by the steady sound of water that did not stop. No further movement was heard. Water eventually leaked into the apartment below. Maintenance staff entered the unit to locate the source. Monica was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor, still near the outlet and charger. The death was later attributed to electrocution caused by contact with a faulty electrical outlet in a wet environment. The combination of moisture, exposed wiring, and direct contact with a charger created a lethal path for current. Afterward, the outlet and wiring in the unit were replaced. Other apartments in the building were inspected for similar issues. Monica's workday never began. What ended her life was not rare equipment or extreme conditions, but a rushed decision made minutes before logging in a space where electricity and water were never meant to meet. It was July 8, 2017, and Fresno, California sat under dry summer heat as shoppers moved in and out of a neighborhood supermarket, carts rattling across sun-bleached asphalt. The parking lot followed a familiar rhythm of reversing cars, brief pauses, and impatient turns. Nothing about the afternoon suggested danger, only routine. Darren Cole was 61, a retired delivery driver who had spent decades unloading trucks and moving through tight spaces on fixed schedules. He had recently left the workforce after accepting an early retirement package and was adjusting to managing daily expenses on a fixed income. Errands were planned carefully. Purchases weighed against routine rather than impulse. Years on the job had trained him to spot problems quickly and deal with them immediately. When something went wrong, his attention narrowed until it was handled. Even in retirement, that habit stayed with him. Small disruptions pulled his focus completely, while everything else faded into the background. He trusted his awareness of space and movement, built from years around vehicles, and rarely paused to reassess once his attention locked onto a task. Parking lots are transitional spaces, designed for vehicles first and pedestrians second. Sight lines are broken by parked cars, and drivers scan for open spaces more than people crouched low to the ground. That afternoon, Darren finished shopping and pushed a full cart to his sedan. The lot was moderately busy, with cars circulating for spots near the entrance. A warning sign near the cart return reminded drivers to proceed slowly, but no barriers separated foot traffic from moving lanes. As he lifted grocery bags from the cart to the trunk, one thin plastic bag tore. Several items spilled onto the asphalt, rolling beneath the gap between two parked cars. Darren paused, glanced around briefly, and stepped into the narrow space to retrieve them. Rather than stepping back into the open lane or asking for help, he crouched low to reach farther beneath the vehicles. At the same time, a compact SUV turned into the lane, the driver scanning left and right for an open space. Parked cars blocked the lower field of view. Darren was crouched below hood level and partially hidden, his attention focused on gathering the items quickly. He did not hear the engine over ambient noise. The vehicle continued forward at low speed. The front bumper struck Darren's shoulder and head, knocking him sideways and down onto the pavement. The vehicle continued forward, and one tire passed over his torso before the driver stopped. The impact was blunt and final. Nearby shoppers reacted immediately. The driver stopped immediately and exited the vehicle in shock. A bystander called 911 within seconds. Surveillance cameras mounted on the store captured the collision clearly, showing Darren crouched low and the vehicle turning into the lane without braking in time. Paramedics arrived in approximately 5 minutes. Darren was unresponsive with severe head and chest injuries. Attempts at resuscitation were brief and unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at the scene as police secured the area and reviewed footage. The medical examiner later reported fatal blunt force trauma. Darren sustained catastrophic head injury and internal bleeding in the chest. The force disrupted vital organs and caused immediate loss of consciousness. Death occurred within moments due to the severity of impact. The death was ruled accidental. Investigators determined the driver was not impaired and had no reasonable opportunity to see Darren in time to stop. The store cooperated fully, providing footage and traffic flow data. In the weeks that followed, the supermarket repainted pedestrian walkways and adjusted parking angles to improve visibility. Signage was added warning drivers of low visibility hazards between parked cars. Darren's neighbor later told investigators that he never accepted help, even for small tasks. It was October 14, 2014, in Plano, Texas, when a quiet weekday afternoon settled over a single-family home in a planned neighborhood. The house was clean, orderly, and familiar, the kind where nothing dramatic ever happened. The danger was not hidden or sudden. It was old, mechanical, and waiting above the ceiling. Ronald Keene was 48 and worked as a regional sales manager for an office supply distributor. His job involved frequent travel and constant deadlines, and he took pride in being reliable without asking for help. At home, that translated into fixing things himself, storing samples, and refusing service calls he believed were overpriced or unnecessary. He kept boxes of outdated catalogs, demo binders, and promotional materials in the attic. The fold-out attic stairs had jammed several times over the years. Ronald knew they were stiff and misaligned, but he believed familiarity counted as safety. He had adjusted the springs once with a wrench and considered the problem solved. Fold-down attic stairs rely on balanced hinges and tensioned arms. When hardware wears, weight shifts unevenly, and the stairs can drop without warning. Manufacturers recommend replacement after visible warping or repeated jamming. The warning sticker was still visible on the frame, but Ronald had ignored it for years. That afternoon, Ronald decided to retrieve a box before leaving for a meeting. He pulled the attic hatch cord. The stairs hesitated, then dropped with a heavy thud, stopping slightly off-center. He frowned, but did not stop. He stacked 2 boxes beneath the opening. Instead of moving a ladder, he stepped onto the first rung, testing it with his weight. The stairs creaked. He climbed another step, then another, leaning forward to reach a binder near the opening. The hinges shifted with a sharp, metallic groan. The left arm flexed outward. The stair frame twisted just enough to release tension with a sudden snap. The stairs collapsed backward. Ronald fell head first, rotating as the ladder folded under him. His head struck the hardwood floor with a sharp, hollow crack. The stairs followed, slamming down onto his upper body and head, striking him a second time with metal and wood. His body landed twisted at the base of the opening. The ladder bounced once, then settled across his torso. Blood pooled quickly beneath his head. There was no movement. His wife heard the impact from the kitchen and ran to the hallway. She found him pinned beneath the collapsed stairs, eyes open but unfocused. She called 911 immediately and attempted unsuccessfully to lift the collapsed ladder. Emergency services arrived in approximately 6 minutes. Paramedics assessed Ronald and found no purposeful movement, irregular breathing, and massive head trauma. They stabilized his neck and attempted resuscitation on scene, but his condition deteriorated rapidly. He was transported to the hospital with advanced life support. Cardiac arrest occurred en route. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The medical examiner reported fatal blunt force head trauma with severe brain swelling. The initial impact fractured the skull and caused bleeding inside the brain. The secondary strike from the collapsing stairs worsened the injury and damaged the cervical spine. The combined trauma disrupted breathing and circulation beyond recovery. The death was ruled accidental. Toxicology was negative. Investigators noted advanced wear in the hinge mechanism, elongated bolt holes, and metal fatigue consistent with years of use beyond recommended limits. The family replaced all fold-down mechanisms in the house within weeks. Inspectors later confirmed the attic stairs should have been removed years earlier. The boxes Ronald went to retrieve remained on the attic floor, untouched, their contents never needed for the meeting he missed. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.